Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our January Wake Up with Wildlife, starting off the year 2021, hopefully with a bang today. Again, my name is Carly Padilla. I am the education specialist for Project Wildlife. We are really happy that you all are attending these webinars now. We really rolled them out last year and they've been really successful. And you can sit in the comfort of your home, having your coffee, enjoying these wonderful presentations that we have lined up for you. 2021 is going to be a really great year. So next month, February, Kate Jarvis and myself, she's our volunteer engagement specialist. She's going to be helping me. We're going to be doing a really big push for the baby shower. So unfortunately, normally our baby season is super big and we have a baby shower to start it off where people can come on site to our center, take a tour through our wildlife center, meet our education ambassadors. But unfortunately, we are not able to do that this year. So we are going to be holding it virtually instead and kind of it's going to be like a 2-week push up to that first Saturday in February, where Kate and I are going to be going through the Wildlife Center and going and showing you all how your donations are put to work. So we'll be showing you actual patients at work. We'll be showing you everything that, a little bit behind the scenes at our Wildlife Center here in San Diego. And then our lineup for this year so far is looking really amazing. We're going to have a speaker from the Audubon Society, from the San Diego Audubon Society, coming in and talking about local songbirds coming through. We have a speaker from the San Diego River Park going to be talking about their land expansion here in San Diego and how they're connecting different habitats, which is really amazing for our wildlife. We have Project Coyote lined up. They're going to come and talk about coyotes just all across the country. And so we'll learn all about that. So really exciting information coming up this year in 2021. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Melodi Tayles from the San Diego. Melodi, I'm sorry, are you from the zoo or the safari park? I always get these confused.
The safari park.
Safari park.
It's all one.
It's all one. So San Diego Zoo / Safari Park. So we're really excited to have her here starting us off today. I'm going to let her give you a little introduction of herself. And then again, if you have questions at all during the program, shoot those into the Q&A box for us and we'll get to them at the end of the program. So Melodi, take it away.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Like Carly said, I'm Melodi Tayles. I've worked at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park for it's coming up to 24 years now, so it's been a long time. I've been a keeper for the major part of those years, probably over 20 years as a keeper and a lead keeper, but now I'm up doing supervisor work, so enjoying that just as much. A little bit different. And thank you guys. Number one, I want to thank you, Carly, for having me on board here today. Love Project Wildlife, love everything you guys do. It's absolutely amazing. And loving this format. I think this is a great idea. So it's fantastic. I hope to see more and more of it. I didn't know as much about it, but now that I do, I'll be one of the people that joins on a regular basis. Today, I'm talking about Peninsular Pronghorn. A lot of people, and I'm going to try to go into a PowerPoint. I had technical difficulties. That's not a pronghorn. I'm seeing a hamster, I believe.
Oh, that's me.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to work on going into a PowerPoint. First, I wanted to mention I had to switch over to my tablet today instead of my computer. So my visibility on you guys is nil, and I don't know that I can see the chat either. So Carly, I'm going to kind of look to you to help me out with that.
Absolutely.
Can you see the pronghorn slide?
Not yet.
Dang. Okay, hold on. I did it wrong. Hold on, people. I'm sorry. Couldn't have done it this way, and I did. Gosh darn it. Hold on. I'm sorry. I had it all worked out as to what button I needed to push, and I pushed the wrong one.
No worries.
Let me come back in. Now I hit share. Green.
Yep, now we got it. Well,
there we go. See, that was a case of overconfidence, but I think we got it now. Okay, so this is a presentation I've given a bunch of times, but I changed it up for today because I realized that a lot of people today, not knowing everybody, not knowing my audience really. Normally I know my audience pretty well. Today I don't. So I'm going to look to you guys to tell me if you're interested in one thing over another. If you have questions throughout, I will just run along for the entire time. So feel free to break in with questions at any time. If you want me to emphasize one thing more than another, I'm happy to do that. One thing I've found in doing various talks to various groups is not everybody knows what a pronghorn is. So I usually start out with picture pronghorn. These are the pronghorn that are in Baja right now. The San Diego Zoo and a bunch of other different zoos here in the US have been involved with this pronghorn rehabilitation project, or not rehabilitation, it's more of a breeding program, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But we've been involved down there since about 2002. But this is a pronghorn, and they're beautiful animals. What I work with down in Baja are the Peninsular Pronghorn. That's what you're seeing on, let's see, that would be the left side of your screen, hopefully. On the right side of the screen is the American pronghorn. And you can see the difference. I mean, American pronghorn, that's what we're used to up here. We see them, Great Basin, prairies. They're a real beefy animal. If you see a pronghorn in the snow, it's probably going to be an American pronghorn. They extend all the way up to Canada. American pronghorn are doing great. They're not endangered at all. They are very widespread, very robust species. The Peninsular pronghorn is a desert subspecies. In fact, so there's arguments over how many subspecies of pronghorn they are. And you can see they look quite differently. But there's American pronghorn, which is the most common, Mexican pronghorn, Sonoran pronghorn. Some of you may have heard of Sonoran pronghorn. Arizona Fish and Wildlife is doing a lot with the reintroduction of Sonoran pronghorn. And then there's Peninsular pronghorn. And Peninsular pronghorn are only found in Baja, California right now, outside of US zoos. And they've gotten down to a very small population. So the Sonoran and the Peninsular are the two endangered subspecies of pronghorn. So cool pronghorn facts, because if you don't know much about pronghorn, this is a good place to start. The pronghorn isn't an antelope. Interesting fact, a lot of you know of the old song, I think it's called Home on the Range is the name of the song, where the deer and the antelope play. The antelope that's being referred to in that song is the pronghorn antelope, but they're not an antelope. The scientific name for a pronghorn is Antelocapra americana. Antelocapridae is the family, right? Antelope is antelope. Capridae is goat and sheep. So they're kind of a goat antelope, and they are the only surviving member of that particular family. So they go back way in history, but that's really cool about our native animal here in the States, is that they are the only member of that family. What are they called? They're called prongbuck, pronghorn antelope, American antelope. In Baja, they refer to them as barrendo. I always say pronghorn down there and people look at me funny, but barrendo is the word for a pronghorn. Barrendero is the word for the keeper of the pronghorn. So I try to remember barrendo. I've got the bumper sticker on my truck with that. The pronghorn is the second fastest land mammal in the world after the cheetah, 60 miles an hour. This usually takes a lot of people by surprise. I'll show you a graphic later, but they say that probably there used to be way back in prehistoric age, and I can't remember what era it was, so don't ask me, but we can look it up. There used to be an American cheetah way back in the day. And they say that, that's part of the reason why the pronghorn has such great speed, is because it had to evade the American cheetah. So it has progressed over the years and still pretty fast at 60 miles an hour. The advantage, of course, the cheetah is faster than that, but pronghorn can go for an extended time where a cheetah goes for a pretty short burst at that speed. And that they travel for hundreds of miles. That's more with the American pronghorn. with the desert subspecies, they will travel back and forth quite a few miles. I don't know if they go quite as far as the American pronghorn. And then one cool other thing about pronghorn that is unique to pronghorn alone, they shed and regrow their horn sheath every year. No other animal does that. And so I have kind of a thing to show you. For those of you who don't know maybe the difference between horns and antlers, let's start there. So like a horn is permanent, right? So if you think of a cow or a goat, something like that, they've got permanent horns. They're single protrusions. There's no branching on a horn. They grow throughout the animal's life, so you can kind of tell the age of an animal by the size of their horn. And they're made of, keratin. We talk about rhino horn on their face and how it's made with the same thing that your fingernails are made out of, or your hair is made out of. It's got that keratin. Antlers on the other side are made of bone. They grow and they are shed every single year. So they grow bigger every year. So you can also kind of tell the age of the animal if they have antlers at the time, but they're an extension of the animal's skull. When an antler grows, it's kind of cool because it starts off very small, and then it starts off kind of fuzzy. And the fuzzy on the outside is called velvet. And the velvet supplies all the blood and nutrients to that antler to allow it to grow. Once the antler gets to full size, depending on the animal's age, and testosterone plays a lot in that, then the velvet actually dries up and falls off. So if you see an animal in the midst of it, the velvet is very soft looking, kind of a fat looking antler. Then as it dries up, it kind of hangs there and looks kind of unkempt. And then once all the velvet falls off, that's when they're in hard rack, and that's when they will compete for females. Pronghorn, on the other hand, and I put this little graphic in here that I'm not super crazy about, but it kind of shows it. The horn itself is, similar to what a regular horn would be, but it's on the interior, and it's actually that sheath that comes off and sheds every year like an antler, but it's made of keratin like a horn. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I can show you a little bit later. I actually have a pronghorn skull that has the sheath. I show it to you right now, but I'm afraid to get out of my PowerPoint. So, because I'll never get back in. But I'll bring it out at the end, and I'll show you the difference in how that keratin sheath goes on and off of the pronghorn. Charlie, I'm going to pause. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So
yes.
Interrupt me if I need to stop.
Perfect.
Or
we'll
answer
do
a question or anything like that. I just want to make sure we have that connection.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's where we are with pronghorn. That's a couple of their very unique features. The pronghorn that's up in the upper left hand is a male pronghorn down in Baja. He has some really nice horns that I could take a picture of. But you can see, I told you that horns don't branch, but pronghorn, again, is different. There's the name pronghorn. There's a little prong on the front part of their horn. So they do kind of branch, but again, pronghorn are unique. They're not fitting into any of these other categories. So more specifically here then, Peninsular Pronghorn. Antelope crapper, again, that's that goat antelope thing. Americana, all of them are Americana regardless, but then the subspecies is Peninsularis. So there's a little picture up in the top right-hand corner that shows you the Baja Peninsula. And then just about halfway down the peninsula, you'll see that red circle that I have up there. That is the only area in the world that you will find Peninsular Pronghorn right now. They used to be all up and down that peninsula, but now they're only in that one little area, and I'm going to zoom in on that soon. They have been listed as endangered, now critically endangered in Mexico, and they've been listed since 1976. So why are there so few pronghorn in Baja? Pronghorn in Baja. There's a lot of reasons. This is one of my drives down Baja, California. Every time you drive down there, you are very likely to see cows and burros just wandering the desert. And it's the last last place in the world you think you'd see a cow, but these cows, although not very robust, do free range in the deserts of Baja. So livestock, human activity, fencing, I think you guys have probably heard this story before, how it can impact the native wildlife. Certainly habitat loss. High fawn mortality is a big reason for these guys too. And that kind of ties in with predators. There's, especially where they are right now in Baja, there's a very high concentration of coyotes. And even though pronghorn are super fast and they can outrun their predators when they're born, they're not so super fast, and they tend to hide. And then if those predators, not only coyotes, but you're talking golden eagles, there's different foxes down there that will hunt them as well. So there's a pretty high concentration of predators down there. Habitat quality reduction, definitely. You know, we can talk about climate change, all of that. There's less and less habitat for them to be able to utilize. There have been introduced plants as well that the pronghorn won't eat, not even the cow will eat. So that interferes with the native fauna. And then poaching, that probably more historically, they're certainly protected now, but that definitely dwindled their numbers, not only in Baja, but you know, here in the United States. I think that's affected all the different subspecies of pronghorn.
Melody, we do have one question.
Oh yeah, sure.
Is what is the prong part of the horn used for?
It's basically used when the males are competing for females. They lock horns, and that little prong kind of helps them to lock horns. I don't know that it's necessarily necessary because other animals do fight with horns without needing that little prong, but it does help them to lock up. Otherwise, I don't believe there is an additional use. I like the question though, and I have a giant pronghorn book, and I'll see if there's anything in there about that. But funny, perfect. I've never thought about it. It was just kind of always there.
Just there, and then.
But yeah.
We have and then Nate raised his hand, and I'm not sure what your question is, Nate, but I have given you the ability to ask it if you would like to. Let's see, ask to unmute. So if Nate, I think you should be able to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask your question. If not, you can always throw that into the chat too. Okay, all right, well, I think we can keep going.
All right, well, interrupt me whenever. So Mexican government decided back in '97 that they really needed to do something about the dwindling numbers of pronghorn. So in 1997, the PPRP, Peninsular Pronghorn Recovery Project, was started by Indesu. Now that's a long name with a lot of words that if you speak Spanish, you're probably doing really well right now, but my Spanish is not great. It should be better. But basically, it's kind of like the Fish and Wildlife down in Mexico. They work together with Espacios Naturales that I have listed at the top. They are a wildlife conservation organization, and they formed this Peninsular Pronghorn Recovery Project. And the conservation organization, Espacios Naturales, they're in charge of the program. So in the early 1990s, they numbered down as low as about 170 animals, and they were all located in the El Vizcaino Biosphere Reserve. That's that little circle, that little red circle I showed you on the map, but I'll show you another picture in a minute. There was a captive management facility built there within El Vizcaino, and they populated, they have a few workers down there. They brought animals into a captive / semi-captive situation to begin a breeding program, because one of the higher reasons the numbers weren't coming up is because of the fawn mortality. So they wanted to make sure that they were protecting the fawns, because we were losing more fawns than we were adults. So hoping by doing that, then they'd be able to increase the population by making sure those fawns got to an older age. In 2000, LA Zoo got involved. to help out with the husbandry and the management of those pronghorn. And we formed a Zoom consortium. So there's been various zoos that have gone in and out of that consortium. The consortium itself, I'll talk about a little bit more a little bit later, but basically they aid both with knowledge. We also try to do financial support, and we work really well together. We do a lot with education as well as just the husbandry and management of the pronghorn. In 2006 was the first time we brought pronghorns to the United States. LA Zoo did that, and we started an assurance population. And basically, since all of the Peninsular Pronghorn only live in that one El Vizcaino Biosphere Preserve, if something were to happen to them and wipe them all out, whether it be disease, flood, famine, whatever it's going to be, we would still have a population here in the United States that would be the safety net for them. And we'll go more into that also. So here it is. This is the El Vizcaino Biosphere Reserve. It goes all the way across the peninsula, from the west side to the east side. The pronghorn don't go that far. If you see at the very top borderline, it says Guerrero Negro. That is pretty much the area where the pronghorn at, right along that side. I've got a little bit bigger map that I'll show you a little bit later, but it's a very small area of the world, and that is the only place that these animals exist, which pushes even more the fact that we need to have that secondary population in captivity to back up this population in the wild. So this is where they've established, it's called La Cholla. This is the camp where they do the semi-captive breeding. It's way out there. It's way out in the desert. Guerrero Negro is a little town. In fact, if any of you do whale watching or you want to do some phenomenal whale watching, go to Guerrero Negro right around end of February, March. That's where you want to be because it's absolutely gorgeous. The amount of whales that come into that bay. So, you know, if you look at the map of Peninsula, well, here, just that we had here a minute ago, halfway down, it's kind of where it jets off into the west side a little bit. That bay there is where the whales come in. And Guerrero Negro is known for the whale watching. And they should be because it's fantastic. What they're less known for, and becoming more and more known for, are the pronghorn. So they set up these pens, and the first pens were pretty, well, they're nowhere near what they are now. But you can see they put out water for the pronghorns that are outside of the pens. The pronghorn that are inside the pens, they provide water, food, shelter. When they first started this, the idea was they had a few animals that were hand reared. So they hand raised them and have them in the pen. Then, when you're thinking of a pen, don't think of a pen that you would think of here. I mean, think of miles and miles of pen. I mean, it's huge. They wouldn't even know they're in a pen really until they got to the fence. So, I mean, they're gigantic pens. And what they would do is have the pens open and then have the animals come inside, like one whole side of the pen would be open, have the animals come in for food and water. They could come and go as they wanted. Generally in the drier seasons, they would see more of them because there was less food on the outside. And then right before birthing season, which for pronghorn is generally January, February, March, more closely to February and March, they would get as many of the females in the pen as they could, close off the pen, run out most of the males, and then let the females have birth within the protected pen. And then by the time those kids were a little bit older, like 3 or 4 months, they'd open the pen back up. So that was a routine for many, many years that they did that. In the bottom middle picture, you'll see their little hut or palapa there. They had their water there. You know, this is a good hour and a half drive from Guerrero Negro itself. So they're out in the middle of nowhere. All the water is trucked in. There is a windmill that helps with electricity, but it's pretty out there. Any of the food they feed, the hay, they grow themselves out there. So it's a really great program. They've really done a great job putting everything together. They use these mangers. They're in the upper right-hand corner to provide food. upper left-hand corner, that shade structure, that's just out there in the middle of the desert to give those guys somewhere as a respite. Not that they can't take the heat, but who doesn't like shade when you can get it? So basically, that's the facility that they set up. Now they've kind of evolved from that, and they're doing more organized, regulated breeding of very large herds. So before it was like, let's get the numbers up because it's so critical that we get some more animals on the ground. Now it's more, let's pay attention to the genetics. Let's pay attention to which males are breeding which females. So it's still on a very large scale, but it's much more regimented than it used to be. So now there's also more release sites. So there's the original La Cholla that we just saw, and they've now gotten help. So there's something in I'm going to try and explain this. There's something in Baja called an ejido. An ejido is not a land owner, it's a land manager. So it kind of works with the family. Like Ejido Juarez would be the Juarez family, and you can see them listed here on the map. They have a huge plot of land that is managed by the family, but not owned by the family. But anything that is done on that land goes through that family. I guess it's similar to a reservation type of a thing. Not quite, but closely. So the conservation group that's in Baja works with these various ejidos that own all this various manage all this various property around Mexico and Baja to come up with these new introduction sites. And you've got to have fencing because you got to keep the cows out, and you want to keep the pronghorn in, of course. So they've established these two areas right across the middle of Baja. There's Baja California is the northern part of Baja. Baja California Sur is the lower part of Baja. So right on that line, we've actually got Valle de los Cirios is on the northern part. Ejido Juarez is on the southern part. So we've got two pronghorn facilities that are very close together and hopefully eventually will connect. And then eventually all three of those areas will connect and pronghorn will be able to travel between those three. I hope that makes sense. Add to all that, a visitor center. This is the great part. I was telling you about the whales. It's great to go down and see the whales. They've got a visitor center. We never had one for the pronghorn. So doing education, the whale tours would occasionally take people out to see the pronghorn when it was too windy to go out on the boats. But nobody really knew much about the pronghorn. So it was important to build a place for tourists to be able to go, tourists and locals as well, to be able to go. So they built this visitor center. This thing's a diamond in the rough. I mean, it's a great building. It's got great opportunity. The various zoos are working to try to get together to get some educational materials put at the visitor center, some different interactive things that people can do. Because right now, it's mostly a shell of a building. It doesn't have a whole lot. It's got some interpretive elements in there, but not a ton. The great thing is it's in the middle of the Valle de los Cirios pronghorn site. So there are pronghorn right on the outside of the visitor center while you're there. Over behind the visitor center is a very large breeding pen back there as well. So, and again, every one of these breeding centers is so huge. I mean, you drive in with your truck and you can drive for forever before you'll see the end of the fence. Most of the time, you'll never get there. But yeah, there's a lot of potential with this visitor center, and certainly anybody that goes to see whales now has a real easy destination because this one is not as far off the highway as the one way out in La Cholla that was very hard for people to get to. So where are we at right now? Current status in Baja. They do aerial census every once in a long while. 50 is presumably the amount of true wild pronghorn but then they don't exactly know because there's been some animals that have escaped out of La Cholla. Some animals come back to La Cholla. So there's been this influx, outflux of animals there. So let's just say, for argument's sake, there's about 50 in the wild. And then in the managed populations, the 3 different sites, there are about 400. And I would even, yeah, it's about 400 animals total in that population. And then here in the US, we have, I would add another 50 to that. So we're getting pretty close to 500 Peninsular Pronghorn, which is a much better place than we used to be, and largely due to the Peninsular Pronghorn Recovery Project. So what about us here in the United States? Peninsular Pronghorn Zoo Consortium. These are the various zoos that are currently involved. Living Desert San Diego Zoo includes both the San Diego Zoo and the Safari Park. LA Zoo has been involved from the beginning. Wildlife World is a zoo just outside of Phoenix, but Phoenix Zoo is also involved, and El Paso Zoo. There have been various zoos that have gone in and out of this consortium. What they do is they try to provide veterinary care for the animals in Baja, any kind of husbandry knowledge that we can help out with when it comes to diet, hoof care, moving of animals from one facility to another. We were able to provide funds to buy a new trailer to be able to trailer animals to different areas. We've provided quad runners and trucks so that the keepers have the ability to take food and water out to the pronghorn. It's just a variety of things we've been able to provide, and it's been a really rewarding partnership on both sides. So what do we have in the zoos? These are a couple of different exhibits. On the left is El Paso. They just built this brand new pronghorn exhibit with this huge big rock structure. On the right is LA Zoo. The good thing is having them here, and number one, right, an assurance population. We've got this safety net for Peninsular Pronghorn, which is huge. Not only that, but we've got this venue to educate people about Peninsular Pronghorn. People in Baja don't even realize that they're there. When they find out, it's such a source of pride to know that this animal is endemic only to their area. So we need people to know about them. And certainly, this is our own backyard. This is one of those species. There are similar plights with the Sonoran pronghorn. We just want people to know more and more about them. And they're like beautiful. So the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, AZA, most of the facilities involved in the Zoo Consortium are part of AZA. Not everyone is. But what it does is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums kind of sets a standard. And part of that standard is a species survival plan. A species survival plan is generally just an organized way to look at a population of animals in order to maximize the genetic diversity within that population, but also manage the demographic distribution of those animals through studbook data. And what that is, so I'm the program manager for the SSP, and I have a list of every single Peninsular Pronghorn that's in the United States, what facility they're in, what their family tree looks like. So that way I can make sure that we don't have the same male breeding with the same female year after year after year, or a dad breeding with his kid or something like that. We want to make sure that we're moving these animals around. In the wild, this would happen naturally, but in zoos, you have to make it happen to where you make sure that one male is able to be with different females so that you're spreading out those genetics. So kind of here's what it looks like. Every couple of years, I do what's called a breeding and transfer plan. So I may have 2 males from the Phoenix Zoo. They were born last year. They can't hold them anymore. Well, maybe the El Paso Zoo can hold them. Some of these zoos have bachelor herds because you get a bunch of boys and you have to be able to put them somewhere. So some of these zoos are kind of commit to we'll just hold the boys. We'll hold all the extra boys. Other facilities are breeding facilities. Living Desert, LA Zoo, San Diego Zoo, all breeding facilities. I have to get back. San Diego Zoo's Bachelor's Safari Park's a breeding facility. But we move females around, we move males around, we look at it on that spreadsheet, that stud book, and we make sure that we're putting the right males with the right females to get the best genetics coming out in the end. And then, so that way we have the most healthy population that we can have. And if we ever do have to do a reintroduction to Baja or anywhere else, we're going to have a real strong population to do that, right? So how else do you strengthen your population and strengthen your genetics? You bring in more founders. So bringing animals from Baja to the United States, even now, is a very important thing to, again, mix up those genetics, make sure we're getting some new blood in circulation. In 2011, first time I did imports, right? I went down, oh my gosh, I'd never been to Guerrero Negro before. This was my first introduction down to the site itself. For anyone who knows Andy Blue, he was my boss at the time, and he says, hey, you want to go down to Baja and raise some pronghorn? And who wouldn't want to do that? So I jumped on the opportunity. What I didn't know is how completely desolate it was and how terribly windy it always is. And so I got down there. Originally, we were going to go for 5 days, is what I was told. And they had a guy down there that I was going. So a little bit of my background. One of the things that I've done at the safari park is I was in charge of our neonate facility. So I've raised a lot of hoofstock in my time. So this is why Andy asked me in the first place, because he knew I had an expertise with raising babies. So I was to go down, teach one of the people down there in Mexico what they needed to do to get successful fawns. And then once the fawns got to a certain age, then we were going to fly them back to the United States. Now, why do we do this? Pronghorn are a flighty species. They're a friendly species when they know you, but out in the prairie or out in the desert, they are a very flighty species. So a lot of times when you try to take an adult animal out of the wild and stick it in a trailer or stick it in close proximity to people, they are so flighty that they will just throw themselves against whatever barrier there is because they're not used to there being a barrier, and they can cause themselves great injury or even kill themselves. So the easiest way to transport flighty animals over a great distance is to hand rear them. They get used to small areas, they get used to fence lines, they get used to people. So you can do this successfully. They're stressed. They don't have much stress because they're used to it from the beginning. So it's really important to do the hand rearing because those fawns will do so much better in not only the transport, but in living within a U.S. zoo and being around people and being able to be ambassadors for their counterparts back in Baja. So this is what we did in 2011. We went down there and I started training the person that was down there to learn. In the upper left-hand corner, that was my nursery. That was a little makeshift building. It had the water tank up on top. We had a propane stove that we could heat the bottles on. And we ended up 1.4 fawns. That's 1 male, 4 females. That's how we do it in the zoo world. Males are to the left of the decimal point and females are to the right of the decimal point. So we had 1 male and 4 females. When we first started them on bottles, they did very, very well. But I learned very quickly that I couldn't really teach someone in 5 days how to properly take care of a fawn because they need to get to at least 3 months of age before they are on solid food and they're no longer dependent on the bottle. So after the first 4 days, we sat down and we discussed it and decided that I could not leave, that I was going to need to stay at least for 2 weeks to get the fawn stable and to make sure that everything was going to go well because we were now responsible for these animals and we didn't want to just leave with that uncertainty. So I stayed for, I don't know, it was couple 3 weeks, I think it was, just to make sure that everything was stable. My Spanish is not that great, so it was a lot of sign language for a couple of weeks. No one there really spoke very good English, which, hey, they're living in Mexico, why should they? But I had to do a lot. I learned how to play different card games, and I don't think I was very good at it, but we got along. You know, they fed me. It was great. They took good care of me out there in the middle of the desert. I was very appreciative of everything that they did, and I showed them how to hand rear fawns. So it was a really good exchange. The picture of the plane, we had to fly them back because you could take them back in a trailer. We could put them in the back of a livestock trailer and drive them up the peninsula. But to get to Guerrero Negro, it's about a 12-hour drive, and it's about a 3-hour flight. So you save a lot of time by being able to fly them back versus drive them back. The other thing is there's a lot of checkpoints. And to do that many checkpoints with the military as well as at the border, and to have these fawns and people looking in and out of the trailer, you can do it. You could do it, but it just seemed a much better solution to have the flight, which means by 6 months of age, it was pretty tight. They were getting pretty big. That's not a really big plane, so we had to definitely squeeze them in a bit, but it worked. One way or another, it worked. We took the seats out of the plane so that we had a little bit more cargo area, and they did extremely well on the flight. And they're now part of the population. In fact, that male that was raised in 2011, his name was Tsunami. That was the year of the tsunami down there, or in Japan. And he's now sired endless numbers of fawns up here in the United States. He's been a really good male. Okay, let me move on from that. That went so well, and that is that good influx of genetics, right? So we decided in 2016 we were going to do it again. We did it on a bigger scale. We had 6 males and 6 female fawns. They all did really well. We decided this time, rather than try to train someone how to hand rear fawns, that we would just do it ourselves. So we had 2-week stints. Sometimes it'd be somebody from San Diego Zoo, then they would trade places with somebody from LA Zoo. They would trade places from someone from the living desert. We had veterinarians going down on a regular basis. It was a much more involved thing, but it was a lot easier to control. So we got these beautiful 12 fawns, and then we did not have the permits to import them. So they all stayed in Baja. That's not a bad thing. The good thing is they integrated into the herds down there. They were still very genetically important to the herds down there. They're in that, a lot of them are in that area where the visitor center is. So the great thing is people go out to see the pronghorn, and there's actually pronghorn that come up to them because they're hand reared and they're kind of used to people. So they get a really close look at those individuals. They're all breeding. I don't know that all the males are breeding yet, but certainly some of them have, and all the females already have. So it still works towards the population. These are still very healthy animals that are doing very well in Baja. Just would have been really nice to have those animals here in the States to continue to make sure that our genetic diversity stays healthy, because as you go over time, you know, with the same animals breeding together, it's that genetic bottleneck that you talk about. And so infusing new genetics in on a regular basis is real important. So one of the things that we do want to focus on moving forward, and you can't do this with every species, right? We got the advantage. These guys are in our backyard, so we can do this. And we've got really good cooperation and a good teamwork with the conservation organization down there. They want us to have a healthy assurance population, Because certainly, again, if we ever reintroduce these guys, the healthier our population is, the better. So this is definitely a focus, not only for us, but for them. But it wasn't working, right? We didn't get our permit. So we realized that we needed to make things bigger, get more people involved. So we need to make sure we have, and they certainly have the support of local communities down in Baja. We needed to talk to the ejidos, the land managers. We needed to talk to conservation biologists, government agencies, zoological facilities. Everybody needed to come together to make sure that the permits or the permitting process wasn't going to be a problem, because here we had all these beautiful fawns that we could import, but we didn't get the permits. We have the permits on the US side. They've never been a problem so much, but the permits on the Mexico side have been. And more recently, government agencies, regulations have made it more difficult to get those permits as well. So what we needed was more recognition of the program, more recognition of the zoo consortium. So when they see those permits coming across their desk, they know what we're about, they know what we're doing, they know we're doing it responsibly. And so they send those permits on through. And then we can get those pronghorn back here in better time. So what we got together all of these people under a species action plan. And we came up with conservation actions. And we weren't looking at just imports. You know, we got people from the US and the people from Mexico. We wanted to look at habitat conditions down in Baja. We wanted to look at diet. We wanted to look at husbandry practices. We wanted to look at education, fundraising, everything that goes into a conservation program. But we were looking at it twofold. We were looking at it for the population in Mexico as well as for the population in the US, doing the comparisons where we could and making sure that everyone was working together on the same page. We had people from Fish and Wildlife down there. We had the San Diego Natural History Museum was represented. We had different various agencies from Mexico represented, certainly the Espacios Naturales that do the Pronghorn Recovery Project. The Zoo Consortium was very well represented. It was a great group of people. And we did this in January, so everything came together. Our 2020 Species Action Plan. We met in Guerrero Negro. It's very hard to get a lot of the government officials from Mexico into the United States, as you can probably well imagine. So it was a lot easier to get our people down to Guerrero Negro. Plus, hey, that's where the large population of pronghorn are and where we wanted to be. So luckily we did this pre-COVID or pre-COVID impact at least. So we did this binational workshop. What came out of that workshop, so much came out of that workshop. But one of the things that we definitely talked about was building the US population. And here's a picture of one of our females at the safari park, Lily, and Lily's two female offspring that she had just last year. Here's the cool thing about pronghorn. Most of the time, and I'm talking over 90% of the time, twins, right? So if you're building a population, have a species that twins and you're ahead of the game. So certainly numbers can go up really quickly with all these twins coming in and out. So certainly we want to do imports on top of the successful breeding that we have here in the United States. We want to bring on more facilities, more zoological facilities, housing, breeding, exhibiting, educating people about Peninsular Pronghorn, about pronghorn in general, and then ramp up that breeding to increase our overall numbers. One of the things that came out of the workshop was, in order to get a good amount of focus and attention from the officials in Mexico for signing off on those permits, certainly was having this species action plan. And this isn't just something that we go down and do at a workshop. We actually have a product from it. We have a document that comes out of that says who we are, what our plans are, what our actions are, who's responsible for what. We haven't Thank you, COVID. We haven't completely gotten that paper published yet, but that is something that we are just about to have completed. And once we have that actual species action plan that shows all of these interests of all of these entities, that's going to help us a great deal in getting permits. The other thing that's going to help is, okay, so I've just learned more about this, so don't give me any questions really on this, but there's something called the Trilateral Agreement, and maybe some of you know more about it than I do, and I'm becoming more knowledgeable on it. But it's an agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. They meet every year, and they look at a lot of different environmental concerns, one of which is species. And what we needed to do was to get the Peninsular Pronghorn first listed on their agenda. We just need to get it on the agenda so we know it's something that they're going to be talking about. Canada, not so much, but certainly the United States and Mexico, we need to have them talking about this subspecies and then listing it. They have their own listing on the Trilateral Committee. So once that species is listed, then getting the permits is going to be that much easier. So every year they have this meeting between the 3 different countries, and then we got ourselves on the agenda. Our Fish and Wildlife representative from here in California was able to work with the people, his counterparts there in Mexico, because both countries have to want to have it listed on the agenda. They were listed on the agenda. The meeting was supposed to happen in, I think it was February or March. I was supposed to go and do a presentation about Peninsular Pronghorn, and COVID canceled that meeting. It wasn't even Zoom. It was just, that was probably before we even knew much about Zoom, or certainly myself. So it was canceled. We are hoping to have it again this year. We are hoping to get the Peninsular Pronghorn back on the agenda, and hopefully then get Peninsular Pronghorn listed. And then once we're listed, hopefully those permits can happen and we can do those imports again. But who wouldn't want a bunch of those little pronghorn kids imported? So what's next? The United States. Reintroduction into the United States. Now I say reintroduce into the United States because we used to have pronghorn here in Southern California. It's probably been since, I think it's 1940 was the last pronghorn in Southern California. Some woman shot the last one. I think it was 1940. It was very close to that. So they used to live here, right? So then the question is, well, who used to live here? Was it Peninsular Pronghorn that used to live here? Was it American pronghorn that used to live here? We've got the Sonoran pronghorn just to the east. Was it Sonoran pronghorn that used to live here? Part of reintroduction is knowing what to reintroduce. Even that brings with it its own set of arguments, however, because maybe it was American pronghorn, but is the desert now, has it changed? Has the topography and the flora and the fauna and everything of that area changed to where putting American pronghorn doesn't make sense? And maybe it should be a desert pronghorn. If it is a desert pronghorn, what subspecies? Oh, you can get into all of this, right? So the thought is, though, for Peninsular Pronghorn, we need that secondary population, or tertiary population, right? We've got the population in Baja that's now in 3 different areas, but those 3 different areas are still very close together. We've got the U.S. population that's somewhat limited in size because we are just held within zoological facilities. If we did a reintroduction into Southern California, we could have a much larger population, move animals in between the 2 populations that are much wider spread apart, and do a lot more for the subspecies that way. So, okay, who used to live here, right? There's the image of the American cheetah back in the day chasing the pronghorn. They used to live here back in the day, along with mammoths and sloths and whatever else was here. So there was a study done. We looked at genetic sampling from museum specimens. There were museum specimens. They're not the greatest of quality, most of them, but there were some in Arizona, southern parts of California, Fresno, some of certainly the animals in Baja we could do genetic review on, and certainly the live different subspecies, Sonoran pronghorn, we could get genetic information, American pronghorn, we could get genetic information. Unfortunately, no real clear line was drawn. It was kind of like, well, we've got the Colorado River there that may have kept the Sonoran pronghorn further to the east, but was it always a barrier, or could they have come over? The genetic samplings kind of showed all three of those subspecies. We had American that was showing up pretty good. There was a little peninsular that showed up, as well as some Sonoran. So kind of the end result was, well, maybe it's been kind of a mixing ground. You know, that's kind of where the three populations would naturally come in closest contact to each other. Does it make sense that Peninsular Pronghorn would come right up through the deserts of Baja into Southern California desert? Yes, it absolutely does. Potentially the Sonoran were blocked by the current Colorado River, but in the past, maybe that wasn't the case. American pronghorn, they're going more to the north. Not to say they couldn't survive in the desert, but it seems less hospitable to them than it does a desert subspecies. So it was kind of decided that, well, it wasn't officially decided, but it was discussed that Peninsular pronghorn would be a good subspecies to introduce into Southern California. There is one introduction of Sonoran pronghorn in Southern California, but it's east of the Salton Sea. So east of the Salton Sea, the habitat there is a little bit different, and it's a little bit more similar to Arizona desert. So as the Fish and Wildlife of Arizona is working with reintroducing Sonoran pronghorn, they came as far east as just the other side of the Salton Sea. So for the west side of the Salton Sea, that's where we're considering as a potential reintroduction site for Peninsular pronghorn, be it Anza Borrego, be it Camp Pendleton, be it, you know, whatever it is. We're looking at various sites doing, in fact, I think the next slide kind of shows that there's a lot to do for a reintroduction. You're not just throwing animals out there, right? You've got to select the site. And once you've selected the site, you got to make sure whoever owns the site is good with that. You've got to have a pre-release pen. You can't just throw them out there. Most of the time, if animals are relocated from one place to another, they try to get back to their original place. So what Arizona Fish and Wildlife is doing with the Sonoran pronghorn is they set up a pre-release pen. They do breeding in that pen, so animals are born there, and then they want to stay there. So then they can release the offspring from that pre-release pen. Water sources, of course, you're talking a desert subspecies, so water is going to be more crucial than ever. In the bottom right-hand corner, that's an example of a water and food area out in the middle of the Baja Desert. They take these cement pylons and then they make a gap. So a pronghorn can go through that gap, but a cow, the shoulders are too broad and can't make it through that gap. So then there's fencing, and then there's these little gaps. So inside that area are the mangers with the hay, and then various water containers as well. Habitat model, we have to do that. A good example was Anza Borrego. We did a habitat model on Anza Borrego because we want to make sure that the species of plants that these animals eat are there. And what species are there that, you know, we don't want to destroy what's there either. We want to make sure that what is there is sustainable. The pronghorn should be propagating those plants as they would have in history, but certainly there's a concern for the people that manage that land now. You also have to look at, disease. There are desert bighorn sheep. Are there diseases that maybe the desert bighorn have that can give to the pronghorn, or hey, maybe the pronghorn have that can give, or are there nearby cattle that have disease? So there's lots of stuff to consider with that as well. And then if we're talking about zoo animals going to the wild, there's a fair amount of conditioning for that. We certainly don't want them going up to every off-roader out there and taking their picture with them. So we definitely have to be able to condition zoo animals to actually want to be away from people again. And that may take a couple of generations of breeding in order to do that. So lots to consider, and that's it. That's the end of my slideshow. I can talk about pronghorn forever, but let me end the show and see if I can get back to where I need to be.
That was amazing.
Back to the hamster. I got it. Okay.
Back to the hamster. Oh my gosh, Melody, that was really, really a incredible presentation. Thank you so much. I think I'm seeing your screen still, though. I'm seeing me on your screen.
I can see you. Oh, you're seeing you? Oh. Well, look, it looks great. Yeah, I'll try it again.
Let's see. There we go. There we are. Okay. So we do have a few questions that came through, and
okay.
I don't know how I got you on here, but I will remove you from there. Oh no, I don't need to remove it. Okay, so a few questions came through. Do both males and females have horns, and at what age do the horns, are they fully grown?
Good question. They're never fully grown. They continue to grow throughout the life of the animal. Males are the only ones that have horns. And I say that 99.99% of the population, males are the only ones that have horns. Every once in a while, you'll get a female that either has enough testosterone in her or something. I don't know. We see this at the safari park too. There are certain types of animals where every once in a while you'll get a female that has little tiny horns. But for the most part, if you're looking at a group of pronghorn, the ones with the horns are the guys.
Gotcha.
Oh, and can you see my screen now?
No, not anymore. We may have to reshare.
But can you see me?
No, I just see your name in a black screen.
Dang it. Oh, wait, here, I got it. Wait.
We saw.
Perfect, right? Perfect.
Oh, there you are.
Okay, wait. I'm going to get that skull.
Oh,
hold on.
Perfect. Well, if anyone has to jump off, I know we're at our 10:30 limit, but this is recorded. Oh, here we go. Oh, wow.
Sorry. So this is a pronghorn skull. It's not all of it. It's just the skull cap. Andy Blue gave this to me. I have no idea where it came from. But it does show you the actual sheath of and this falls off every year. So it continues to grow. This is the skull itself, and this bony portion of the skull just continues to grow throughout the animal's life, and then the sheath comes off. Oh, I've got it backwards because the prongs are in the front. But yeah, that way, this you'll find out in the desert, and then they'll grow a new one next year. So they're super cool.
That is so amazing.
Now it's not going back on, but you get the idea.
That is so. Oh my God, we love Andy.
Yeah, they're cool, and they're the only animal that does that. Nobody else does that.
That is, I don't think I ever knew that much about pronghorn at all. And this was just such a great, I'm just so glad that we were able to give this information to our constituents who are all participating today. Another question came through was, how big are the animals? How big are the pronghorn when you transported them from Baja?
Ideally, they would have been younger than they were, but at 6 months of age, they were probably about the size of a Doberman. I'm not sure what to put it with that everybody's going to know, but say about the size of a Doberman. But eventually they get up to where they're a little closer to chest height. Their head, yeah, their back is a little bit lower than that.
Oh, nice. Wow. So they're decent size. So that was probably a really tight airplane ride.
Yeah, it was snug. We had to rebuild. We had a set of crates and they grew out of those crates. So we had to build new crates and we built them specifically for that plane. So yeah, it was a thing.
At what age do the pronghorns begin breeding?
Oh, that's a good question. For the most part, for the females, it'd be about 1.5 years. The males might be a little bit sooner than that. In captivity, because of all the nutrition and care and everything that they get, a lot of times animals breed earlier in captivity than they would in the wild. In the wild, they've also got a great deal of competition that they don't have in captivity that might prevent it from happening. But basically, between 1.5 years, 2 years for both sexes.
Beautiful. One of our, Susan said, "Hi, Melody. I'm a volunteer at the safari park and sure miss being there. Where are where are the pronghorn herd at the park? Are they on the rocky hillside that used to be visible from the monorail?"
Oh my gosh, no, they never survive there. They break every leg they have. No, unfortunately, they're off sites because we don't have an exhibit for them yet. I'm hoping that eventually we do a lot more with our native wildlife and we expand our Condor Ridge area to include pronghorn. We've got a beautiful Baja garden that I would love to see pronghorn exhibited there. But we also have a long-term holding area that's kind of over the hill from the park. And they're out there right now. So it's a really good, quiet breeding situation for them, but we're not able to share them right now. So we're leaving that up to our partners at the zoo.
Wow. So everyone who attended today, this was a really special chance for you to get a little inside look on them then. We had a question that said, what would the Baja pronghorn be able to mate with the American pronghorns?
Yes, unfortunately. Any of these subspecies could breed together. So that's another reason why it's real important when we're talking about reintroduction that we're looking at natural barriers, that if we're looking to preserve a subspecies, that we're making sure that only that subspecies exists in that area.
Right. Gotcha. And then how long do the Peninsular Pronghorn live?
Roughly, I mean, there was one male in Baja that lived to about 18 years old. That was pretty old. He was doing pretty well. But usually 14 to 18, I would put as roughly the longevity.
Average, good. We had someone say this was so interesting. There was so much they were unaware of. Thank you so much. And then one more question is, or there's a few more in the chat I'll get to, but what's the best way to get involved and help?
So that's a difficult one. Certainly going to your local zoos and supporting them, because San Diego Zoo, Living Desert, LA Zoo, they all give money into this project. So definitely supporting them supports the project as well. There's also, and I can send it to you, Carly, Espacios Naturales that runs the Peninsular Pronghorn Recovery Project. They have their own website and you can donate directly. So I can make sure that you have a link to that. So if people want to donate directly down there, and it's a cool website anyway, to see where they're located and all that. So I'll make sure you have that.
Yeah, that would be great. I usually send out a follow-up email next week and to get people's feedback and share some information. So that would be great to share with them and for them to share with their family and friends too. We had one question in the chat about are there any expectations that cougars or jaguars could have any impact on pronghorn recovery? I'm assuming that's if we reintroduce them back in here in Southern California.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's part of doing that habitat model is looking at predators. Coyotes, sure, yeah, they're definitely a threat. Cougars, yes. Jaguars, yes. All of that can eat a pronghorn and would. So, the density of predators would definitely be something that we would need to be looking at.
I mean, so many different things that you would have to think of.
Everything.
We said we just have a bunch of excellent, very interesting and informative talk. Thank you so much. Linda attended the zoo ocelots presentation last fall, but your tweaked version was much better. Thank you for presenting, Melody. Could someone ask if they could see the pronghorn at Safari Park, but you answer that.
You
And
can
just
at the zoo. If you go to the zoo, you'll see them there.
the zoo you can, Safari Park, because zoo is with the bachelors, Safari Park's the breeding.
Right, yeah. Over in the Elephant Odyssey section of the zoo, I think they live with the camels. So you've got both Peninsular Pronghorn and camels.
And then we have, this was so cool, and Andy rocks. We're sorry you guys lost him, but we are so happy we have him.
Yeah, we are sorry we lost him as well.
And he was the one who put us in touch with Melody to get this presentation in the first place. So Andy is so amazing. And then we have someone who said they feel like they have a BS in pronghorn biology now. So thank you so much. And yeah, everyone's just saying thank you, Melody. We are so happy that you're able to take your time today and give us a little chat on these guys. We have one more question that she said, I think of pronghorn as being open terrain animals, desert or prairie. Do they also live in hills/mountain areas?
Certainly the American pronghorn, they have adapted to all various types of habitats. So yeah, you'll see them up in the mountains, in the snow. Pronghorn have really great eyesight. So they want to be able to see a predator from long away. So they don't tend to like to be in really forested areas or really crazy terrain because they like to be able to see what's coming. So a lot of those flat prairies, flat desert, big fields of snow you will see them in. But yeah, not so much the forested.
And especially that speed that they can get up to. That was amazing.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And to watch a pronghorn run is one of the most beautiful things ever.
Oh my gosh, there's gonna be chills. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as I did. Come back next month, February 5th, I want to say February 6th. Sign up and take that tour with Kate and myself and learn about what your donations are doing when you donate to Project Wildlife and putting them straight into use working with our wild animal patients. But Melanie and I are going to stay on, and if everyone else, thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend, everyone. Take some rest, relax, enjoy the new year, and stay tuned. Come back next month. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.